Good evening, Warriors, and welcome into another edition of the R&R Sports Report. My name is Randy Isbell, and unfortunately, not joining me as always is Mr. Robert Hagan, who is under the weather today. So he just unfortunately got sick, like everyone else in the Pacific Northwest seems to be getting sick right now. Right around the time everyone else is doing Christmas parties and get-togethers and other podcasts and stuff. So it is just me. So I apologize that you are stuck listening to me for 2 hours, but we will do everything we can to have some fun. Hopefully, we'll have some people in here chatting it up with me, and we'll just kind of bounce around and have kind of a looser show than normal. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about week 14 of the NFL. So much is going on. We only have 4 weeks left of the regular season. It feels like we're only halfway through the season. And in the end, you blink and the entire year is gone. High school basketball is in full swing. There is a whole slate of games going on tonight. We'll kind of run down all of those, kind of look back at how everything went this last weekend. Obviously, high school wrestling also getting into full swing. There's been some tournaments going on in the area over the last couple of weekends. We are down to 3 teams in the World Cup, so that's very, very exciting. Congratulations to Argentina for making it to the championship game with a big win today. We'll talk about that. Obviously, we'll talk about the passing of Mike Leach and talk about some of the crazy antics that he had in press conferences and interviews and kind of what we have lost today with his passing. I can't go through this show. I know it's almost been a week since the news broke because always the big news breaks on a Wednesday when we have a Tuesday show. But Aaron Judge is still a Yankee. He's got paid. That is for sure. And the Trojan is your Heisman Trophy winner. So we're going to do all that and so much more. But I can't go any farther without wishing my girlfriend of many, many years, Haley, a very happy birthday. It's her 32nd birthday. I think she's still at that age where I could say that, right? If not, nobody's listening. It's totally cool. She is out with the kids building gingerbread houses right now. So they're out having a good time. So happy birthday to her. And I just have to say it. I was wanting to lead the show with a lot of fun with Robert, but he was unable to make it. But congratulations to me, as Hagan did make a fantastic comeback in our high school / college regular season pick'ems that we were doing every single week. Hey, you calm down. He made a fantastic comeback. Was a double digit. I had a double digit lead or so in this, and he came all the way back, tied it up in our final week. So we decided we would decide it all in the Army Navy game. Luckily, we picked different sides in that game, so we were able to do that. I took Army, and in double overtime, old Army gets it done, 20-17, wild game there. So congratulations to me as I'm able to win those pick'ems. I need it because there is zero chance I'm winning the NFL pick'ems as he continues to gain one game on me every single week. He's now up 11 games in that pick'em, so we won't spend as much time on that. He can talk about that next week if he wants, because I'm not. Let's look at your calendar tonight. Again, a lot going on in high school sports as all these teams are trying to get as many games in as they can before the Christmas break. As a quick count here, I believe there are 11 high school boys games going on tonight and 9 girls games. Some of the bigger ones, Clarkson and Moscow playing a doubleheader tonight. Both boys and girls are in action up there in Moscow. The Lewiston teams are in action tonight. They're out in Oregon taking on Pendleton. Lapway boys are in action. They put up over 100 points over the weekend in a game. We'll talk about that because it was a kind of special circumstances with those 105 points that they scored. They are taking on Clearwater Valley tonight. Deary takes on Timberline. Genesee and Potlatch will be a good one. Kendrick is having a really strong season, especially on the girls' side right now. They have a doubleheader with Highland and so much more that's going on. Lewiston's in action wrestling-wise as well. So, yeah, lots lots of local stuff all over the place, especially this last week before Christmas break. We'll quickly look at your national scoreboard real quick and look at the old NBAs. There's only 5 games on the slate tonight. 76ers over the Kings, 105-89 in the fourth. Bucks are just crushing the Warriors right now, 85-62 in the third. And the Rockets all over the Suns, 54-34, just about halftime. They're still about getting ready to go. Pelicans and the Jazz, along with the Celtics and the Lakers. Full slate of hockey for you. I'm not going to list all of them, but I will say that, it's usually time.
Release the Kraken!
Release the Kraken. Hopefully the sound effects are working. Usually I have Hagen here where we test things out. Let me know. It's usually time to release the Kraken. It's not the case today. The Lightning are cruising, and that one 5-1. They just started the third period there. Maple Leafs are off to a great start of their season. They're crushing the Ducks 4-0 in that game, and just kind of scrolling through, nothing else too crazy. Islanders and Bruins in a good one, tied at 3. That one in the third period as well. There are no women's basketball games out of teams in the top 25. 3 on the men's side. Number 5, Houston, is cruising against North Carolina A&T, 43-21. Arizona's over Texas A&M Corpus Christi, 34-28. That one late in the first half. And then just getting started, Memphis and number 4, Alabama, is going on as well. So there's just a lot of stuff going on. And now you get that week of NFL this week, and I guess the next 2 weeks where, college football is for the most part out of the way. Now they have 573 bowl games, but now we're starting to get the Saturday games in there next week because Christmas falls on a Sunday. Most of the NFL schedule lands on a Saturday, which will be different. Some Christmas Eve games. You have 3 Christmas Day games on there as well. Obviously, with Christmas landing on Sunday, it messes up our bowling league. So we're working things around, but there's a lot going on. But let's get into it. Let's get into the NFL. And again, we try to continue to shape this up, and we'll focus first on what I thought was the biggest story of the week, and that is just the continuing domination of the San Francisco 49ers. I mistakenly lowered them in my power rankings last week because Jimmy G got hurt, and obviously Trey Lance was hurt in like week 2, and they were down to Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy, who looked fine last week, but you really wondered, okay, what is this team going to really be able to do with the last pick in the draft last year that was just kind of thrown in there as depth, and now it's on his shoulders for the rest of the year. And now, his first actual start of all time, he's going up against Tom Brady. And yes, Tampa Bay is not having a fantastic year, but it's still Tom Brady, and it's still the Bucks who are leading the NFC South. So let's kind of see what they can do. And I think we got our answer on Sunday that the 49ers will be just fine, as San Francisco defeated Tampa Bay 35-7. It got so bad that even Brock Purdy got benched, as he would pick up some rest, something I don't think he was ever expecting to do as an NFL player. But Josh Johnson got some time in there for the 49ers. So obviously we'll talk about power rankings here a little bit later in the show, but it's zero surprise, I think, to anybody that I will be moving them back up in my rankings, as I wanted to kind of see what they could do. The talent on this team is just absolutely incredible. I was listening to Rich Eisen either today or yesterday, and he was joking around about, let's just pick anybody off the street and see if San Francisco can win just with some Joe Schmo at quarterback, because the talent around him is so good. Defensively, they're fantastic. Obviously, trading for Christian McCaffrey in the middle of the season has paid off huge for this team. He had 14 carries, 119 yards, and a touchdown. Also, a couple catches and a touchdown in the receiving area. Unfortunately, Deebo Samuel goes out with an injury, so he's done for the regular season. He gets carted off, and it doesn't look very good, but everything we've seen is high ankle sprain, so could possibly be back by the first round of the playoffs. San Francisco's not really in a bid for that one bye week, so they'll have to play in that opening round. They might have to do the first round without him. But if they can make a deep run, he'll be able to come back and hopefully make a big impact for this team. They have a huge game on Thursday night as they will travel to Seattle with a chance to win the NFC West to get that all locked up. We'll have those predictions as well a little bit earlier. But on the other side with Tampa Bay, they are one of the luckier teams out there that they are in the absolute garbage division. I mean, they are 6-7 right now, and they are, I believe, are still leading, and they are leading the NFC South. And they have a game advantage right now, as Carolina and Atlanta are both 5-4. New Orleans is 4-9. So nobody is playing well. We've joked around about for weeks about will the winner of the NFC South have a winning record. I now wonder if the winner of the NFC South will have 10 losses, which is just absolutely insane to think about. I was like, yes, we've added that extra game to the schedule, but it's a complete cluster and very interesting to see where everything will fall and who basically is going to be facing the Dallas Cowboys, because the Cowboys will be locked in as the 5 seed. And they have a 2.5 game lead over the 6 seed, who right now is Washington, and they're 2 games behind the Eagles. And again, with just 4 weeks to go, I don't see the Cowboys really moving from that spot. So Dallas will be traveling to an NFC South team. We just need to figure out which of those 4 NFC South teams Dallas will travel to. And we've seen it before with the Seattle Seahawks. Team with a bad record still wins the division, gets the home game on the wild card weekend, playing the top wild card team, and they go out and get the win. So Dallas is not looking at any kind of a bye week just because they're playing the winner of the NFC South. That is for sure. All right, let's get into some fun.
Answer my question! The question, jerk!
Let's get into some of our games that we have started playing here during our NFL Power Hour. Robert did get on and answer these questions. He had enough strength for that, but he has yet to respond to me since he put these in. He misread one of my questions for sure and gave me an answer that just makes zero sense. But we will get to that when we get there. Our first game, though, will be fill in the blank. And we'll hit on 3 different games here, just kind of a quicker fashion to kind of talk about all the games. And we'll go all the way back to Thursday night football, the game that we all just went, whatever. Raiders are starting to get rolling, right? Trying to get back into a playoff position. They're playing the Rams, who have completely imploded this season. They just picked up Baker Mayfield, who got dropped by the Carolina Panthers. He's only been on the team for 2 days. So, this is going to be an easy win for the Raiders, right? Well, no. And that's where my fill in the blank question came in. It was the performance by Baker Mayfield less than 2 days after signing with the Rams was, Robert Hagan said, adequate, which I think is selling Baker Mayfield a little short. I'm not now saying here that what we saw from Baker Mayfield in the second half against the Raiders is going to be something that we should be expecting the entire rest of the season. But what he did on Thursday night to basically eliminate the Raiders from playoff contention was fantastic. I said that his performance was typical of the NFL season this year. We have seen so many ridiculous moments, and everything you think is right turns out to be wrong the very next week. I don't know how many times we see a team completely implode and go, well, now we have issues with this team and we're worried about this team. And then they go out and win 4 straight. Or a team starts to get hot a little bit and you're like, all right, maybe they've turned the corner, and then they lose 5 straight and then they're completely out of it. We'll talk about the Miami Dolphins here in a little bit. And I have to try to check myself because I'm starting to wonder if they're going to be that AFC team that slips out of the playoffs, because they have not looked good the last couple of weeks. But it's the NFL. It's a week-to-week basis, and maybe they can turn things around. But Baker Mayfield was fantastic, 23 of 35, 230 yards and a touchdown. He came in relief of this game. I don't know if the Rams even threw a pass in the first quarter. I was at my son's final basketball game and checked the score at his halftime. And there was like 3 minutes left to go in the first quarter, and the Raiders were up 10-0, and the Rams had 0 pass attempts. And Baker came in, I want to say, in like the second quarter, and then looked really good. It looks like the Raiders are still going to win this game. They punt the ball away with under 2 minutes to go. Beautiful punt down the far side of the field, lands right at the 2-yard line, and Baker just goes down there, 8 plays, 98-yard drive, and they win the game. And it's not like he has weapons or he's getting lots of help, and he has more weapons with the Rams than he did with the Panthers. His leading receiver was Ben Skowronek, or whatever you say his last name. I don't know who that is. And that was your leading receiver on Thursday. He had 7 catches for 89 yards. The Rams are completely banged up. It's not the Super Bowl champion caliber roster that we were accustomed to last year. Cooper Kupp's not there. The running backs just are not good. The defense is not as good as it was last year. And Baker Mayfield got the job done. So congratulations to him. Buffalo did beat the New York Jets 20-12. Mike White, man, I have to give him both props and a concerned look for his performance on Sunday. He took some ridiculous hits, and one even taking him out of the game. He went up and went into the locker room, came back, gutted it out, helped get the team back within 1 possession with the ball in their hands. They just weren't able to get the job done. But I was saying throughout that game, I don't care if I have to sit here and look at horrible Joe Flacco, who, of course, fumbled like the first snap he had. Like, there's no reason to have Mike White in this game. We're not going to beat Buffalo at this point. Do not have this man get killed. And he went out, did everything he could. So it was a very gutsy performance by him. It's just a bad sign when your quarterback leaves the game, you allow him to come back in the game, only to then send him to the hospital to make sure that nothing was seriously wrong with him. If you were that worried, you would never have put him back in the game. But my question for our game, where the Jets' playoff chances are now what? And Robert says 50-50, which I think might be a little nice. I'm more worried. I said preparing for a crash landing. The Jets' schedule going forward is the Lions, who are red hot, the Jaguars, who just went out and beat the Titans. That'll be a really fun Thursday night game there. Seahawks, who are battling for a playoff spot, and then the Miami Dolphins, who could be in a situation themselves where they have to win that last week to clinch a playoff spot. So if you're telling me the Jets, who right now are not in the playoffs because they lose the tiebreakers to both the Patriots and the Chargers, they have to go 3-1 those last 4. I'm worried. I don't know if I would be super confident against those 4 teams that the Jets could run off 3 of 4. All right, they played very tough games against the Vikings and Bills, so their defense alone can lead them to some wins, but that's a tough task. So I'm getting a bit worried. Obviously, the Jets are a year or 2 ahead of schedule. None of us thought that they would even be in this situation. You go back and watch our August shows, and I was saying, man, 5 or 6 wins, and I'm doing cartwheels for how bad this team has been, and wondering what Zach Wilson was going to be, and he has not been great. It's just this defense has really clicked and turned it around, and it's a team that I don't think the Lions or the Seahawks or Dolphins really want to face trying to get into their playoffs, but I don't know if the Jets can make that run. Also, the Detroit Lions, who we talked about last week about being in there with the Raiders of making a late season push, they got the job done against the Minnesota Vikings, winning that one 34-23. So that's the same question. The Lions' playoff chances are what? Robert says they got a slim chance. And unlike the Jets, I think he's underselling the Lions right now, who are in the 9th seed, and they are a game and a half behind the Giants and the Commanders, for that matter, for the 6th and 7th seeds. The Seahawks do have a game on Detroit right now. So they have a couple teams to get through, but their schedule is pretty easy. Now, division games are always interesting. The Eagles, who just don't lose, their one loss was to the Commanders, who we don't think is on Philadelphia's level, but it's a division matchup. So the Lions, like I said, they have the Jets this Sunday, and it's going to be a huge game. I think one team might be eliminated from the playoffs come Sunday, and whoever loses this game. But then they get the Panthers, who their running game has gotten things going. They beat the Seahawks. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I mean, Sam Darnold, you're not too worried about him. And the defense is okay. So, and they can cause you some threat. And then it's the Bears and the Packers. So I can see Detroit going on or completing this run and making it difficult on both the Giants and Commanders, who play each other this week. So, excuse me, if the Lions go out and beat the Jets on Sunday, they're guaranteed to be a half game out of the playoffs. I love the emoji options. We have emoji options? I don't know what emoji options we got. Did they add stuff to Facebook? Who knows? But yeah, Giants and Commanders play each other. So Lions take care of business against the Jets, and you're a half game out of the playoffs. But then the Giants and Commanders both, I believe they get the Cowboys, and they get what I think is the Chargers they both get. So it's interesting. And the Lions trying to make a run could be very, very fun. And I'm kind of rooting in that direction. All right, let's focus on another key game here, as we were curious to see if the Giants could stand up to the Philadelphia Eagles. I just said, the Washington Commanders were able to get a win against the Eagles. It's the only loss that Philadelphia has this year. So would Philadelphia have issues against the Giants going on the road in a divisional matchup? If they had no problems. I don't think this game was ever close. Jalen Hurts looked fantastic. Miles Sanders is starting to get things going. How many times have we just thought he was just dead? Miles Sanders is just done with Philadelphia. They're not using him anymore. He's a complete football zombie at this point. He just keeps coming back and coming up in big situations. He had 144 yards on the ground, a couple touchdowns. We always talk about A.J. Brown and how good he has been. Defense made Daniel Jones look like Daniel Jones. But the big thing was they shut down Saquon Barkley. And it definitely shows that the Giants are not built to come back in games. If you can jump on them early, you could just put a fork in them at this point, because Daniel Jones is not going to come back and get you a win. I mean, that is for sure. Yeah, I can't disagree with Robert Taylor, who says that the Lions will absolutely win that game. Jets too banged up. I'd most likely be picking the Jets in our pick'ems just because I'm trying to make some kind of crazy comeback. But if you had me put down $100, I'd probably put it on Detroit, because yes, they're going in the right direction, and the Jets just have so many issues. But the Eagles definitely can take care of business. I do believe Jalen Hurts is the slight front runner for your NFL MVP. I'm not saying Mahomes has zero chance in it, but what he has been able to do with these Philadelphia Eagles, only having the one loss, and he is performing at such a fantastic level that I think he is the front runner. And honestly, I think it is a 2-horse race. I mean, Joe Burrow could possibly sneak in there if he has a fantastic final 4 weeks and the Bengals run the table and they win the AFC North. Sure. I think Joe Burrow could be in consideration, but I think it's between two. I think it's Hurts and Mahomes. And right now I would lean Mahomes. All right, let's get into some more games and some more questions.
Who would cross the bridge of death must answer me these questions three. The other side he sees.
Let's get into some over and under games. And this is where old Robert Hagan, who is not feeling anywhere near 100% right now, misread one of my questions. So we'll have some fun. And now that Robert Taylor is at least in a spot that he can comment, hopefully I can get some answers from him too. So let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans. What a surprising result that one was. Not that the Cowboys won the game, Obviously, we all thought that they were going to beat the Texans, but having to do it in comeback fashion, it's because I picked them, or I picked Houston as my loser pick in our loser pool that Robert does. But man, we're making it very difficult for me. All right, I lose that one. I'm out. I have one win on the year thanks to the Colts beating the Chiefs earlier this year. And there's only one person that has yet to earn a win in that thing. So I'm doing my best to stay in there. And Dallas ran me through all the paces on Sunday, but they get the win. And just like I'll talk about here shortly with the Kansas City Chiefs, it doesn't matter how you get it done. At the end of the day, a win's a win, and clean up whatever issues that you had against a team you should have rolled, and you move on from there. We'll see what the Cowboys are able to do. But my question is, now that we know that the Cowboys are almost locked in for the playoffs, the only team that's locked is Philadelphia, but Dallas is as close as you can get. Over or under 1.5 playoff wins for Dallas this season? That's always the question with Dallas, right? Is they can make these great regular season runs. They're a great regular season team, but they get to the playoffs and they kind of lay eggs. But now they have a pretty good defense. The running game is a two-headed monster. Dak Prescott really is the big question mark right now. He is making some very interesting decisions and some bad throws. But on top of that, the NFC is a bit weak this year. So that was my question. And then Robert answered over, but then gave me regular season schedules. So I think he was saying over 1.5 wins the rest of the regular season. That's not the case. I'm going to say under. I do think that they should be able to defeat whoever wins the NFC South, because I already said earlier that is almost a lock, that the Cowboys will be traveling to whoever ends up winning the NFC South, whether it's Tampa Bay or Carolina, or if Atlanta or the Saints can go on some late season push. We'll see what Desmond Ridder is able to do next week. I think Dallas should be able to get through that game, but we have seen that scenario multiple times, and that terrible division winner always seems to come away with the victory. So that's not a great place for Dallas. But I just don't think Dallas is on the level of the 49ers or the Eagles. I think they would be very hopeful that they land the Minnesota Vikings in that second round. I think the Cowboys could beat the Vikings, but obviously they would have to travel to Minnesota for that game. It's still indoors, so it's great, but it's a very loud stadium and difficult for somebody like Dak Prescott, who has not shown the ability to win these big games yet, to come in and get the win. But I mean, it's against Kirk Cousins, who always has that issues too. So I think that'll be the best scenario for Dallas, is they go through the NFC South team and then they get Minnesota, and they let Philadelphia and San Francisco punch each other in the mouth for a while and see what happens. Next one was Carolina Panthers taking out the Seattle Seahawks 30-24. Just a heart-wrenching loss, I think, for you Seahawks fans. I kind of feel bad for you with the old Jets quarterback, Geno Smith, but now you're out of the playoffs as far as seeding goes right now. Seahawks are a half game behind the Giants and Commanders. And my question is kind of mean. Over or under half a win the rest of the season for Seattle? Does Seattle get one more win the rest of the way? It seems mean until you look at their schedule. Thursday night, they host San Francisco. Now, yes, home team on Thursday night. That should help them out there a little bit, but it is the 49ers. And Brock Purdy shows to be the real deal, and everyone around him has been fantastic. Then on Christmas Eve, they are at Kansas City. Now, I don't think anybody is predicting Seattle to get that victory. New Year's Day will be against the New York Jets. Now, that's a home game for Seattle. That's a winnable game, I think, for the Seahawks. But I think the Jets could shut down the one-dimensional offense of the Seahawks for sure. I think that'll be a very low-scoring game. The weather might be horrible up there come New Year's Day. But I think it'll be a low-scoring game that Seahawks could definitely lose. And then last week's against the Rams. And at that point, if you've lost your first three, that might not even matter. And then does it even count as a win if you go out and beat the Rams? Or have you gotten yourself in a situation where it's a must-win to make the playoffs and you're going up against Baker Mayfield? I have a friend that would absolutely hate that situation. But that's just kind of where they're sitting. Robert does say that the only game that they will win is against the Rams. So we will see how that goes. Hold on 1 second. Somebody real quick. Sorry about that. Well, let's go to Monday Night Football. New England Patriots defeat the Arizona Cardinals 27-13. This was my chance, man, to finally gain a game on Robert, who has just the slow cuts this year. He jumped out early. I've struggled with my picks. It's just they've been horrible this year. But I want to say we had 3 straight weeks where we only picked one game different, and Hagan won all 3 of those. And then these last 2 weeks, we've picked 5 games different, and he's been able to win 3 of the 5. Last week, I was hoping that the Jets could beat the Vikings. They do not, so I lose that matchup. We go down to Monday night in our picks this week. And then, unfortunately, Kyler Murray goes out in the third play of the game. They kept it close there for a little bit, but the New England Patriots are very opportunistic. I want to say they lead the league in points scored off of defense and special teams. And they showed it again. They had a fumble recovery for a touchdown on Monday night. Arizona just looked rough on offense. I still am not a believer in Mac Jones, but he is doing just enough to get these wins. Patriots now back up to that 7th seed. So congratulations to them there. Might have some help here for the rest of the show. We'll keep you updated now that we're getting through all the NFL stuff for them to talk about, but we're having fun. But my question for this game was over under 2.5 AFC East teams to reach the postseason. Now, you got to think Buffalo's a lock. And they've run away with the division now. They're sitting pretty. They're the top seed in the AFC. Miami right now is in the playoffs, right? As they are the 6th seed at 8-5, a game behind Cincinnati. And then you have the New England Patriots, Los Angeles Chargers, and New York Jets. They're all sitting 7-6, tied for that last spot. Patriots, 5-3 in conference, have the tiebreaker over the Chargers. And they also have obviously swept the Jets this year and got Zach Wilson benched because those are the only 2 games Zach Wilson lost was to New England. So they're sitting okay as well. So the big question now is, will we stay there with the 3 teams that make it? And I'm going to say under because I think the Chargers make it, which will obviously knock it down to only 2 AFC East teams. I think the Chargers do get in. They're starting to kind of get things figured out just a little bit. So then it comes down to Dolphins, Patriots, or Jets. Who gets that last spot? I am worried about the Dolphins. They have not looked good over the last few weeks. Patriots, I just don't believe in this team, but they continue to find ways to win. And the Jets have a very difficult schedule and continue to just lose pieces. As a Jets fan, I'm hoping that week 18 will be a win and get in between the Dolphins and the Jets for that last spot, but I'm unsure about it yet. But I do not believe that 3 teams in the AFC East will make the playoffs. Robert says he's taking the over just to be different. So that's top-notch analysis for Mr. Robert Hagan on that one. So he'll probably be right and then be able to brag about it for sure. You are watching the R&R Sports Report here on our Facebook and YouTube pages. It's usually not just me rambling for 2 hours, but that's kind of the situation we're in now. Robert Hagan is under the weather and hope that he has a speedy recovery, and hopefully I'll have somebody be hopping on and saving me now as they finally had some things clear up a little bit. But everyone else that I've talked to, totally fine that they are busy and doing other things. It's not their fault that they have lives and are doing things that they can't drop last minute when Robert finally goes, okay, I can't make it. So to totally appreciate everybody for getting back to me when I was kind of making the rounds, but that's just kind of the way situations go. But next week, we will be back at our normal time, Tuesday at 6, where Robert hopefully will be back and we'll be able to continue the show normally. And then the week after that is the Vista Holiday Tournament. My plan right now is to find a way to pre-record some interviews with some people that are involved with the Vista tournament and kind of just put together a show for you guys. Because obviously we'll be down at the P1FCU Activity Center that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, that last week of the year. So we will, I know for a fact I will not be available because Lewiston has the last 2 games of the opening round, and Robert usually likes to stick around and watch all these games. So it'll probably be a pre-recorded episode in 2 weeks. But I've prided myself over the last few months that, especially come the winter time, we would bounce around episodes with basketball and take a week off here and there. And we've done really, really good the last few months we'll get the show in. However we could do it, we'll get the show down. But now, being here by myself again for a 2-hour segment, and you guys are just staring at me ramble, I have realized we need more graphics. I need to. We did a great job when we did the show with Eric and Harry back for the NFL draft of having all the different player stat pages up and ready. And I need to do that for like these NFL standings. So when I bring it up, I can just pull stuff up so you're not staring at me for 2 hours, because nobody needs that in their lives. So that is, we continue to grow and learn on this show. And that is something that I think we need. We also need some more background music and stuff that won't get us kicked out of YouTube, which I continue to attempt to do because YouTube's restrictions are so difficult. But we're making it work. And again, hopefully Robert will be back next week. Let's continue on with the NFL and the old Kansas City Chiefs, who beat the Denver Broncos. It was closer than it should have been, as they win at 34-28. But by all accounts, this game was over. But just before halftime, Kansas City scored the first 27 points of that game. Give credit to Denver for not giving up. They score a couple of touchdowns. Jerry Jeudy had a fantastic day, and they cut the lead to 2 scores at halftime and were able to keep it within 1 score for most of the second half. Kansas City just could not put them away, but they kept them just far enough away. Denver never led in this game by any means, and I like to have some fun with Robert Taylor because Mahomes looked rough there in the middle part of that game, threw 3 interceptions, made some silly mistakes. It's the reason why I did not put Mahomes at the top of my list in the preseason rankings, though I did put Aaron Rodgers, and that has been shown to be a grave mistake. But it's sometimes Mahomes, who is one of the greatest talents I've ever seen at the quarterback position, but there are times where he even overestimates what he is able to do. He'll go through and make this crazy underhand shovel pass for a 40 whatever yard touchdown, which just looked hilarious when it looks like they were just going to roll Denver. And then he goes out and makes some bad decisions and bad throws and throws 3 interceptions in the game. Or as Robert Taylor says, he gets bored. You cannot have that from your starting quarterback. You cannot let these teams get back into these games. You got to be full on to win these NFL games, just for the fact that Denver, who's been horrible, was able to come back and make it really interesting in the second half is tough. And we have seen Mahomes have issues in these playoff games as well. So he needs to just try to lock himself in for 60 minutes and see if they can make a run. Because I do think they're one of the favorites, if not the favorites, to win the AFC this year. I think it's down to 3 teams, right? It's the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Bengals. I don't know if there's another team in the AFC that I could go, yeah, they got a shot. Tennessee's completely imploding. Chargers are going strong at the right time, and I do think they'll make the playoffs, but they have shown nothing come January that they would be able to compete with those 3 teams. Baltimore is on their 17th string quarterback at this point. I mean, Lamar should be back come playoff time. But when has Lamar been a big playoff quarterback? I'd love to see the Jets defense try to perform in January just to make things interesting. But I would not predict them to beat the Chiefs at all. Same with the Patriots or whoever gets in there. And 2 in the Dolphins, just no thank you. Absolutely. But, Kansas City still goes out, gets the win. So congratulations to them. Let's get back to our final little NFL game here, and it's called Pick a Side. So Cincinnati defeated Cleveland 23-10. Was no doubt in that game at all that the Bengals were going to win that one. A lot of doubt for the Baltimore Ravens, who Tyler Huntley goes out with a concussion. Lamar's been out. I can't even remember now who the third-string quarterback is who came into that game because I wasn't watching it. Yeah, I didn't really care. Anthony Brown, who went 3 for 5. And now it could be Anthony Brown starting for them next week, but they do a good enough job beating the Steelers 16-14. So the question is, who wins the AFC North? They're tied right now. Baltimore beat Cincinnati earlier on in the year, but they play week 18. And I believe right now that will be the Sunday night game, week 18. Usually they will set the week 18 game for a divisional matchup that the winner wins the division, but the loser doesn't make it. So it's possible that it's an NFC South matchup where the winner would win the division and the loser doesn't get it. So it doesn't affect as many other teams come Sunday night. But yeah, I could see Baltimore Cincinnati being that Sunday night game, our last game of the regular season. Winner wins the division, loser gets a wild card. And hell, they might even get to the point where they would have to play each other. Probably not, because I do think that the AFC South division winner would be the 4 seed, but you never know with how the last 4 weeks go. But I'm going to say Cincinnati Bengals are going to win it. I like everything that they have been doing over the last several weeks. Baltimore continues to have issues with their injuries. We talked about the Jets injuries, but Baltimore is going through a ton too. They do have a pretty easy schedule though. They get the Browns, Falcons, and Steelers before they get the Bengals, but finishing with 3 of 4 divisional matchups is tough as well. And if both teams win out, Cincinnati wins the division. So, and the last one, actually, I'm going to skip the last one because hopefully this person will hop on and it'll be perfect timing for him. So I'll hold off on this last question just to see if we do get the guest or not. Let's go to Sunday Night Football. I've talked a lot about the Chargers and how much I'm starting to believe in them being a playoff team. They won a good one against Miami, 23-17, and I don't think that game was even that close. The Miami offense was horrendous in that game. Tyreek Hill scored both of their touchdowns. One was just on a broken defensive play where he got behind the defense and he's too fast to catch up with. I give credit to Tyreek Hill for just being a genetic freak in that situation. And then the other touchdown was on a lost fumble by the Miami offense that rolled around for a little bit, went underneath the pile, came out of the pile, right into the hands of Tyreek Hill, who then just ran around everybody for the score. Those were your 2 touchdowns for the Miami Dolphins. Tua went 10 of 28 for 145 yards and that 1 touchdown to Tyreek Hill. Herbert's starting to look much better. I think the run game is starting to get there. The defense is starting to click a little bit more. This is, again, a very scary team come playoff time. It's not a team that I believe would be a favorite. I don't think that they're this year's Cincinnati Bengals, where they make that late run and everyone kind of writes them off, and then next thing you know, they're in the Super Bowl. However, if that is the case, it wouldn't completely blow my mind either. And I think that's the really fun part of the Chargers. We've been making fun of the AFC West so much this season just because of the fact that, we thought it was going to be the best division. And then it turned out to be one of the weaker divisions minus Kansas City. But now here come the Chargers a little bit. They're going to make things interesting, not for the division, but to try to make it into the playoffs. And who knows? We could get a Chiefs-Chargers wild card round game. And that in itself could be really fun. I'm going to hold off on this Jacksonville question, but the Jaguars do beat the Tennessee Titans 36-22 and keep themselves alive come the playoffs. Obviously, getting crushed by Detroit last week really hurt that aspect, but that was a big win. Hopefully, we'll talk about it here shortly. Hit some NFL news. I talked about Kyler Murray getting knocked out for the season. He had tore ACL in the third play of the game on Monday night. So he is done for the rest of this year, and there's a good chance he misses part of next year with it being torn so late. We have seen some people come back from that injury in the exact same situations, but, everyone kind of recovers differently. And Arizona also losing Zach Ertz, who was injured earlier on in the year and ended up having surgery. So he is done for the year. And let's just be frank, the AFC Cardinals are done for this year. And we'll talk about that more in a second. But talked a lot about the playoff picture, but let's talk about the NFL draft order. Something we did last year, mostly because the Jets were in that mix. But I think this year is very, very interesting to see where teams will fall. Not because I think it's super important to be in a top 2 pick or a top 3 pick or whatever. I think there's a lot of very talented players coming out in this draft from the little bit that I have looked into it. I will look into it a lot more as we get into the off season for sure. But just because of all the trades that we have had over the last couple of years that are going to affect this draft in major ways. Now, the Houston Texans are nearly locked into that top pick. They're 1-11-1. They have a 1.5 game lead for that top draft pick right now. But your number 2 pick is the Seattle Seahawks. Not because they're doing terrible. They're battling for a playoff spot. But with that trade with Russell Wilson, they have the Denver Broncos pick. And the Broncos at 3-10 would have had the number 2 pick if the season ended today. Instead, it's the Seattle Seahawks. So that's a big move for Seattle to get rid of Russell Wilson, who has completely regressed this year. And I think Geno Smith has played better than him all season long. And now to have a top 2 pick on top of that's fantastic. Chicago would be the 3rd pick. They're 3-10. I think there's a lot of talent with the Bears, but they just need to find a few extra pieces. So that is a very interesting pick, I think, for Chicago and see what they're able to do as far as growing as a team. And then the 4th pick should have been the New Orleans Saints, but with a draft pick swap last year, the 4th pick would be the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles who have only lost 1 game this year. They would have a top 5 pick, as would the Detroit Lions, who are really starting to turn things around. They have the Rams' 1st round pick, so they would have the 5th pick right now in the draft. So it's interesting right now that 3 of the top 5 picks are traded from another team. And who knows what we will see as we get closer to the draft day, as that's usually when we see these top 5 picks get traded. And we could see them get traded. Would I be shocked to see the Eagles trade out of a top 5 pick and just continue to accumulate other draft picks? No, absolutely not. And they could also go out there and just get a key piece as a top 5 pick. And a lot of moving parts, I think, for Philadelphia. It's also interesting that we have 5 teams now that do not have a 1st round pick this year. Browns, Rams, Saints, 49ers, and Dolphins do not have a 1st round pick. Obviously, Miami does not have a 1st round pick because they forfeited it through all the allegations and stuff we've seen over the last year or two. But yeah, a lot of teams that are going to have multiple picks, a lot of teams that do not have any picks. So even though the Jets are playing well, I'm just so used to focusing in on the draft order because usually that's all a Jets fan is doing come December is, all right, where are we going to land in this draft? And and how far down can we get if we just lose out all our games. And so there you go. Those are for those teams. Those are Seahawks fans are. I mean, they were rooting against Russell Wilson already, but I mean, you're wanting them to lose out so you can get that second pick. It's great. Let's move on to the old power rankings. And Robert, I know he's not feeling well, but he was boring. He did not make any changes to his top 5. Eagles 1, Chiefs 2, Cowboys 3, 49ers 4. And he still has the Minnesota Vikings in his top 5. Don't agree with it. Don't like it. No, thank you. I will agree that the Philadelphia Eagles are your best team right now. They continue to prove themselves week in, week out, only have the one loss. I do think Jalen Hurts would be your MVP right now. So congratulations to what he has been able to accomplish and what the Eagles have been able to do. But my number 2, I told you at the beginning of this show that I felt bad for overreacting to the Jimmy Garoppolo injury. So I'm putting the San Francisco 49ers back up to 2. That's where I had them before the injury. Now, Tampa Bay is not a fantastic team, but they are a playoff team right now. And the 49ers looked fantastic in them. So I'm going to move them back up to 2. The Chiefs are going to stay at 3. I'm not going to overreact to blowing a huge lead against a terrible team. They're still a fantastic team. Probably the front runners to make it to the Super Bowl on the AFC side right now. I'm going to move the Dallas Cowboys, though. I'm not fully overreacting to their close win against Houston. It's just those teams are very, very close. So I just basically flipped them and the 49ers because I think San Francisco would beat them in the playoffs right now. So Dallas is 4, and I'll keep Cincinnati at 5. Let me know your power rankings if you are listening live or if you're watching a replay. Just put them in the comments down below. Let's get into the eliminator section of our contest. It's getting difficult now, as after this week, there's only 4 other teams that you can eliminate that won't make the playoffs. I'm still very much dreading taking Washington back in week 3, as right now they would make the playoffs. And Robert is sitting okay. I mean, looking through his right now, New England would make the playoffs, and he and I both took out the Patriots in ours. But other than that, he does not have a single current playoff team that he has eliminated. And he has went ahead, and to celebrate Haley's birthday, he is going to eliminate the Green Bay Packers, who were on bye week this week. But he figured now is a better time than any to go ahead and take out Green Bay, I guess. That's not where I'm going. I said it earlier. I'm taking out the Arizona Cardinals. So both Hagan and I have eliminated 7 teams in each the AFC and NFC, which means we can only eliminate 2 more. And there are several teams in both conferences that are in contention for those playoff spots. So it's going to be really fun, I think, to do that. Now he's on. There he is, Mr. Eric Watkins, straight out of teaching some people some maths, I think, right?
Working on a little bit of statistics and having to have an interesting conversation explaining fusion. You know, typical Tuesday night.
That'll be the 3rd hour of the R&R Sports Report, and I won't be involved. So I was just talking. I'm talking to myself, and I'm used to that right now. But Hagan and I do this eliminator, where we eliminate a team from playoff contention each and every week. And then by the end, hopefully, we've eliminated all the teams that don't make the playoffs. Speaking of math, the math works out great. How worried should I be that I eliminated the Washington Commanders in week 3?
I would be more worried, oddly enough, with that tie. We have seen what Taylor Heineke can do under center the past season and a half, especially when he knows the job is his. You factor in the relationship that he's built with Scary Terry McLaurin, and the fact that this week their game against the Giants, round 2, flexed into Sunday Night Football, a win here, and that puts maybe a little bit more pressure on the likes of Dallas that they would like. So if I were you, I would sweat out the next fortnight.
Yeah, I'm very much worried. How great would it be, though, if the Commanders and Giants tied again?
I would be in hog heaven. Seriously, because even in my network pick'ems, the longest complaint was, when we're sorting out this record, we had this one tie. Now that we have 2 and potentially 3, if that happens, it's like, you got to consider them now.
I know a lot of places just count them as losses for everybody.
No.
I'm not that way either. You get the tie and we move on. But all right, exactly. So I skipped over this game as we were going through all the rundowns. I knew you had kind of hinted that, all right, I can hop on in a few minutes. So I went through it, but played a game earlier of pick a side.
Okay.
All right. Jacksonville Jaguars defeated the Tennessee Titans 36-22. Looked pretty good doing it. All right. Little redemption, I think, for Trevor Lawrence after getting smacked around by the Detroit Lions. And I'm sure that as a Jets fan, I'll get that experience on Sunday. But my question to you is, who wins the AFC South? Because they messed it up last week by losing to Detroit.
They did.
But before that loss, Jacksonville owned their own destiny.
And here's the rub. Even with that loss, and this is exactly what I was saying all day Sunday, that loss against Detroit was more of an aberration. And Trevor Lawrence wasn't terrible. A lot of that was on our defense. What do we do with games after aberrations? We come out and we look fantastic. We held Derrick Henry, King Henry, to 2 rushing yards in the second half. Let that sink in for a bit. Even though you've got Tennessee at 7-6, Jacksonville's only 2 games back. It wouldn't surprise me with some sort of miracle run if Jacksonville winds up winning it. I said during my preseason preview on the Broadhurst Watkins Sports Report, game by game, if everything goes right, the Jaguars would go into the conversation week 18, potentially finish 9-8. Who knows what could happen in terms of the division? Now, running the table, that starts creeping in. I think Jacksonville can put it together and win it in a bit of a squeaker against Tennessee. I trust us a lot more than I trust the Titans.
The good news is, with that win on Sunday, like you said, it's only a 2-game deficit for Jacksonville, and you played that last week. So you have to look at it if you're a Jacksonville fan or a Jacksonville player. Neither the Jacksonville Jaguars are not listening to this show, but that's okay. You have to gain 1 game over the next 3. And it becomes really interesting when you pull a Robert Hagan and you look at the schedules, as I have, because he's not here and somebody has to do it. Both the Titans and the Jaguars both get the Cowboys and Texans over their next 3 weeks. So that leaves 1 game different. The Tennessee Titans get an AFC playoff contender in the Los Angeles Chargers. And your Jacksonville Jaguars get a AFC playoff contender in the New York Jets. So you could not get more even, I think, as far as remaining schedules go. But I'm with you. I would predict that the Jaguars have a better chance to beat the Jets on a short week with all the injuries that the Jets are going through. Very tough defense that New York has by far, but it's a short week in that situation. Over Tennessee, who is completely imploded, going out and getting that win against the Chargers, who I really think are starting to get to that playoff caliber level. So if you say everything else is even, say you both lose to the Cowboys and you both beat the Texans, it really comes down to that game. And I think I lean Jacksonville.
Yeah, because I mean, you as the Jets fan,
Mhm.
I tell you all the time about the eliteness that is Joe Flacco.
Oh God.
But if you say that, but you think about it, we saw Mike White, we saw those ribs, everything going on in injuries and stuff with Zach Wilson. Do you really have confidence in
No.
number 19? You
No.
answered my question for me.
I mean, it was earlier on in the show. I talked about the Jets' playoff chances. I think it's done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get Lions, Jaguars, Seahawks, and Dolphins to end the year, and Mike White was bent over backwards multiple times against Buffalo, and they just don't seem to want Zach Wilson back on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's Joe Flacco, I'm done. And in the end, that's okay because I predicted 5 wins, and we got more than 5 wins. So I can't even be mad about any of it. That's for sure. Real quick, big games in week 15. Again, only 4 weeks left in this regular season. It's just flying by. But now we're starting to get the Saturday games. Indianapolis at Minnesota is should not be that great. Baltimore at Cleveland. Can Cleveland pull off the upset against the 17th quarterback that Baltimore's throwing out there? And then the big one, Miami at Buffalo. I think the Bills should roll in that game. I do not believe in the Dolphins anymore.
Especially with the weather, because not so much now. I'm keeping an eye on those forecasts.
Mhm.
We saw the 6-foot deluge that forced the moving of the game to Detroit. It
Mhm.
won't be that bad, but at the same time, you put an ice cube in the freezer, turn down the temperature a little bit, they're completely in their element.
Yep.
Completely.
No, absolutely. And honestly, with it not being a 6-foot dumper, it's better for Buffalo because they can get the game in.
Exactly.
And then they'll be in those elements, and it's just even better for them. And what we saw from Miami on Sunday Night Football was horrible. Other key games this week: Detroit at the Jets. That is, I think a loser is eliminated game. And I don't have a lot of faith in the Jets, though I have said multiple times on the show I will still be picking the Jets because I need anything right now to catch Robert Hagan in our picks. So I'm taking all sorts of goofy things, almost to the point where I'm almost about to switch my Thursday night pick underneath his nose. Now that I know who he's picking.
Hey, I'm there with you. In my pickings, we're down to legit tiebreakers. Brian and I currently have the lead, so yeah, in battle with a Jets fan, I know how Robert feels.
Well, I'm 11 games out, so there's no tiebreakers needed for me.
Yeah, thankfully, to a rare split week, I've won more weeks than anybody else, but needless to say, there's going to be some potential arguments the last month of the season.
Other games, Tennessee at the Chargers. Should be really good. You're really looking in for that game for sure.
Yeah.
Cincinnati at Tampa Bay. Giants at Washington, as we said on Sunday Night Football. And then Rams at the Packers on Monday Night Football. Almost no playoff implications, but Baker Mayfield versus Aaron Rodgers could be fun, especially if you watch I don't usually watch the Manning cast. I might watch the Manning cast just to hear what they talk about for Aaron and Baker.
Now, I'm going to throw out a little bit of not proposition, but hypothetical. You mentioned Baker Mayfield versus Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
What if we've seen this happen already? Baker Mayfield versus Jordan Love.
I think they would have announced that already.
Now, see, while they would have potentially announced that already, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Say it's another situation like from a weeks ago. Aaron Rodgers starts the game, doesn't finish.
Right. I do think if the Packers lose this game, that'll be the last time we see Rodgers this year because then they'll be eliminated. And that's kind of been his thing is once we're out, do whatever you want. Though, you guys, you're out. Just time to move on. But I'll be interested to see what Atlanta does with Desmond Ridder as they've already announced that. It's time. Let's see what Jordan Love has and whether because they have one more year with Aaron on that contract.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not moving him. I always see all these rumors of them. His contract is too big for any of these teams that are in contention to move. But it'd be interesting.
Even with the larger salary cap going into next season, it's still too much of a percentage chunk if you look at it.
Mm-hmm. We'll get into the World Cup in just a minute, which is even more perfect that you were able to get in. I have watched a lot of it. Also, I wish I could use the Rich Eisen segment that I watched. Anybody that does not watch Rich Eisen, I love his show. I take a lot of inspiration from it. Go watch his first hour on his Monday show for his ideas on how to fix soccer. Because I do the same thing as him as a non-soccer fan. And I'll bring it up here. I'll do a Cliff Note version of it. Okay. But I still say go watch the full version because it's great. But
you have me intrigued. Yes, okay.
We'll touch that in a minute. But now that I have somebody from Florida here, let's talk some local sports. We got to give them some love. And actually, nobody's told me if these worked because we weren't able to test it. Are my sound effects working?
Hello there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear them just fine.
Okay. Usually I have Hagen here. We do a bunch of test runs and I have non-PG buttons that I will use towards him before the show to test things out. And I wasn't able to do that today. But like I said, it is time to talk some local sports really quick. And for me to hit this.
Basketball, gimme the ball because I'm gonna dunk it! Basketball, gimme the ball because I'm gonna dunk it!
It's the best part of basketball is that song. But high school basketball in full swing. We've broken this up into two segments because we want to give the smaller schools some love as well. And then, of course, Robert is sick, so we get a lot of analysis from the guy in Florida that totally knows about prairie basketball. But no, for the two schools that Robert and I follow the most, obviously, he is the PA and play-by-play guy at times for the Clarkson Phantoms. I'm the play-by-play guy for the Lewiston Bengals when they're at home or once we get later in the season. They're on the road tonight taking on Pendleton, and I'll see how they did when we get done with the show. But the girls have turned their season around, started 0-4, have won the last two as they beat up on Moscow last week, just before or the day after our show. And then on, when did I do that game? Friday? Was it Friday or Saturday? Everything's all combined. Friday, I believe. They took on Lakeland and got the win there, 51-49. It looks close. It was not close. This was a Kansas City Chiefs Denver Broncos situation in this game. Lewis had jumped out 9-0 and led the entire way, usually by double figures. They were up by 12 going into the fourth quarter, and then somebody put the lid on the hoop. And Lakeland came all the way back, never took the lead, hit a three with like 2 or 3 seconds to go to make it a 2-point game.
Yeah, one of those close enough to make it interesting.
Yeah. Zoe Kessinger led the way with 13 points. She was the Lewiston Tribune Prep Athlete of the Week for last week for her 20-point performance against Moscow. So she continues to be the offense right now for a girls team that I think has been a lot more physical these last 2 weeks than they were in the first 4 games. Obviously, Eric, you are not aware of the situation, but the Bengals on the girls' side lost 6 seniors, and then their junior, about to be senior, who was their leading scorer by far, was a fantastic player, signed with the Washington Huskies to play volleyball. So she's not playing basketball this year, rightfully so. So needless to say, the Lewiston Bengal girls team had a lot to change out. And it's starting to come into pieces, and it's going well. The boys' side for Lewiston are now 3-1 on the year. They lost to Pullman 68-50, and I still don't know how this is possible from this team that I have watched 3 times now. But Lewiston trailed after the first quarter 25-3.
Now, I've heard you with sort of debates and everything with this coverage, so you'll have to refresh my memory.
Yep.
This is with a shot clock Yes.
It was in Pullman, so yes. Washington.
Okay.
So Washington has a shot clock.
Mm-hmm.
Idaho has agreed to a shot clock this year, but
Okay.
so far for 3 Lewiston home games, they have not used it yet.
Okay.
Because I think it's kind of a trial period for this first
Mhm.
year, because a lot of the smaller schools is going to take them a little bit to get it implemented. Plus, it takes you an extra person to kind of run the boards
Right.
and stuff. So they have been installed at LHS. They have not been in use yet. They were for that game, but just nothing worked for Lewis, and they were able to make it look a bit more respectable after that first quarter. But Jaden Brown for Pullman had 26 points. Champ Pewaukee had 24. Pullman was 22 of 24 from the free throw line, which is
Big part of it right there.
insane for a high school game. James White for Lewiston, who is he was never a big scorer last year, has led the team in scoring the last 2 games. He had 13 in that one, and then a big 77-45 win for the Lewiston Bengals at home this last Friday. This was the best part, right?
Mm-hmm.
25-3 beat down Pullman gave Lewiston in that first quarter. Then
Mhm.
Lakeland goes out and scores the first 7 points. And you're just going, oh boy, here we go.
Here you go again.
Lewiston scored the next 25. It wasn't even close. He just ran away with it. 4 players in double figures, James White with 12, and then Carson Way, Parker Cushman Bogar, and Rylan Gomez each with 10. So nice bounce back for Lewiston.
I'd
Again,
say so.
they are, I believe the girls have to be about halftime, maybe third quarter right now. They started at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Boys will start right after that over there in Pendleton, Oregon. And then their final home game of 2022 will be on Saturday. I'll have the call on the river 105.1. Girls will be at 1:30, boys will be at 3. And then, like I said, we'll have the Avista tournament and all the craziness there. Real quick, for Clarkson, got to give them the love too, even though Hagen's not here. Both the boys and girls split their weekend games. Girls lost to Colfax 72-45. Bryn McGoy for Colfax is just fantastic. She had 34 points in that game. But then Clarkson bounces back, wins at 61-53. Robert Hagen put these notes in. I want to know who the referees were for these Clarkston Freeman games. Because on the girls' side, he said there were 49 fouls. That's a lot
49?
49 fouls in that game. Eloise Teasley led the way with 20 points for Clarkston in the win. Boys' side, they split theirs. They're 3-1 on the year as well. They defeated Colfax 65-59. Xavier Santana, who's a fantastic shooter for Clarkson, 33 points in that game. Seth Lustig, who is the younger brother of now John Lustig, who is a freshman for Lewis Clark State College, who just had a fantastic game. We'll talk about him in a little bit. He ended up with 17 as well. And then again, Clarkson took on Freeman. Freeman won the boys' battle 62-50, and there were 38 fouls in that game. So between the boys and girls, it's 87 fouls in 2 games.
Now, I'm delving into the world of being a referee. I sign up and I'm going to be refereeing some flag football games for a local league. They teach you, especially at the younger levels, you don't have to call the fouls and stuff on every play. I'm wondering if some of these basketball refs, they didn't get that same memo.
I want to give a shout out. He listens sometimes, so he's been a very busy man because he is the athletic director for Clarkson High School, and he is a high school basketball referee. But Shannon Wilson, he's one of my favorite referees to watch. He has done a couple Lewiston games this year already. We had a game. I forget who Lewiston was even playing. It was a team down south. It was either Boise or Bora.
Mm-hmm.
And the girls kind of were in that same situation where there was a bunch of fouls early on.
Mm-hmm.
And Shannon Wilson, as he was getting ready to pass off for the free throw, which, by the way, both teams were in the bonus with 2 minutes to go in the first quarter. So there was a lot of fouls early on. Before he gave the shooter the ball, you could hear him say, all right, we could live here for the rest of this half, or we can clean it up. You know what we're expecting from you now. It's on you. And then bounce the ball. And and it was a much cleaner second quarter. And I don't know if either team reached the bonus in the second half. So I like that he took the time out
Oh
too
yeah.
to give
It's
them.
just like, hey, know what's going on.
Mhm.
You know now how I'm going to call the rest of the game. I don't mind doing it. I don't necessarily want to, but hey,
Yep.
if I have to, I will. Expect whistles.
Absolutely.
I do appreciate that.
Yeah. Clarkson is in action tonight. They are at Moscow. I know Trevin Pixley for the Tribune is up there covering that. And then they will be at Ellensburg on Monday, which is into the Christmas break, so a little late for some of these games. Says he put girls at 5 p.m., boys to be determined. Obviously, just the boys will be after the girls. Usually
Oh yeah,
7 o'clock.
double header.
We now have the schedule and the brackets out for the Avista tournament. I don't know if Hagen has posted them on our site yet. If he hasn't, I'll have him do it when he's feeling up to it this week. One of my favorite tournaments, we talk about it all the time, between the Avista tournament and the Golden Throne game between Lewiston and Clarkston, high school basketball makes LCSC players jealous for the turnouts that come out for these events for high school basketball. It's absolutely fantastic. Run through them really quick. Boys will be in action. So they alternate boys and girls throughout the whole day. Boys will be first. Run through their games real quick. Clarkson and Pendleton will take on the opening game at 9 a.m. on Tuesday the 27th. Again, we'll see what Pendleton's like because they play Lewiston tonight. Prairie at Shado Park at noon. Lapway, who, Eric, I'm going to talk about Lapway in a little bit. This team is legit. They are a small town school.
Okay.
Like lowest of low-level high school, like Class 1A, Division 1.
Yeah, so you're
for
like
Idaho. So very small.
teeny tiny enrollment levels.
They beat the top-level schools in Idaho without it being close. And there's a kid on this team who just got visited by WSU. And if other teams knew about him, there would be even bigger schools checking him out. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But I'm very excited. Lapway faithful travel. It's like a 10, 15-minute drive for them, so it's not crazy. But the whole town shows up at the activity center for these games. They take on Moscow at 3 p.m., and then Kellogg and Lewiston will be the final game on the boys' side at 6 p.m. Girls' side, a lot of the same matchups because we have the same schools, boys and girls' sides. But Clarkson will take on Grangeville at 10:30. Pendleton will take on Prairie at 1:30. And then we get the same Lapway and Moscow, and then Kellogg and Lewiston in the nightcap. And I just want to say, if we get a Lewiston-Lapway semifinal game on the nightcap on the boys' side, that place is going to be rocking, and Lewiston's going to get shredded. And I am a Bengal supporter. I am the Bengals play-by-play guy, but what Zach Eastman is doing with the Lapway Wildcats, we'll talk about it here shortly when we get to the second half of these high school games, but holy crap. All right, let's get into the World Cup. Let's bring you back into the conversation. I didn't watch a ton of the group stage. It was on. Usually I love being on the West Coast because games hit really well.
Oh, yeah.
World Cup this year, not as much. These 11 o'clock games are perfect. Like now that we've hit the quarters and we've hit the semis, games are fine. But it usually half of the group stage is done on the day before I'm even awake. And then I'm off doing my morning stuff when those are going on. But
it was tough for me, and I'm a bit of a night owl. So sometimes if I'm definitely like awake, I'll be able to catch the first half of the first game of the day in the group stage. But even then, 5 a.m. for me, completely different prospect than like 2 a.m. out in your way. So I can entirely understand.
But I have to say, I watched most of the quarterfinal matches. All of them were so good. So much drama involved. 2 go into penalty kicks, which still has to be a devastating way to end a World Cup run by a team is line up and kick. I get that there is a science to it, and it's not just luck. And there's a lot that goes into each one of those kicks, and the drama involved is insane. But it's like getting to Game 7 of the NBA Finals, being tied after overtime, and you line up to shoot free throws.
Now, I know the complaints about this, and it's funny because I was just watching a video about this in particular from Tifo Football. Wonderful, like, YouTube channel. They're writers. They cover everything for The Athletic. It's fantastic. Many people have tried, and there's even been legendary committees to say, okay, what can we do instead of penalty kicks, especially at the World Cup? And it's like, oh, intervals where you take a player off and you have fewer players
that
like
would
they
be-
do in hockey.
I kind of like that.
I do too, but I figure, every 5 minutes or so, boy, those players would get dog tired. We've had golden goal before. We've had silver goal before, which is like basketball, how you treat the 2 halves of extra time different. There's all kinds of, alter how you do the penalty kicks, have running penalties like they used to do in Major League Soccer. I'm open to the idea, but it's like, if you haven't figured out anything by now, I think the odds are going to be pretty slim.
Mhm.
It's like,
No,
I
and
hate it,
honestly-
but I love it at the same time.
Honestly, like, I just mean as a bad way to get eliminated. But
Oh,
it is
yeah,
high-
absolutely.
It's high drama.
Hmm.
And I almost don't want it to go away. Whether it's the fairest way to end one of these games or not,
Mm-hmm.
but the drama involved with it is top notch, and you give them credit. It is still weird to me as a non-soccer guy to just watch the mindset of teams instantly flip when they score a goal.
Mm-hmm.
I gave out to the point with the U.S. where they had their first game where they blew their lead. And then they had the draw with England and were able to get their crazy win and move on. And I was telling people just in random conversations, I'm like, I hope the U.S. gives up a goal early on because they play much better when they're aggressive. And when they score a goal, they just stop being aggressive.
Well, and it's not just stopping scoring a goal. Credit to Greg Berhalter, U.S. national team coach. He's put together great tactics. He's got great recruiters, a lot of dual nationals like Jurgen Klinsmann did. The problem was depth.
Yeah.
Once you get into the second half, and especially 60th, 65th, 70th minute, our top guys are just dog tired. That's where the mistakes came in. And a team like the Netherlands, they made us pay. So,
and I will say it wasn't just a U.S. thing. It's just something I've noticed in other matchups as well. Oh, team scored a goal, and now they just kind of go in this little prevent deal.
Yep, it's like, all right, park the bus, sit back, we'll defend, so that way we can just go on and go home. And I think it reminds me a lot of way with what happened in the World Cup in South Africa. It was so much of that same mentality. I think part of it this time around.
Oh, you mean?
The sound of those will never die.
A long clip, by the way. I forgot how long that was. There we go.
But with that, I think particularly because you're not having it in your traditional summer window, it's right in the middle of the club season. Guys don't want to get hurt. They're still looking to transfer, make big money. So from that perspective, in a lot of ways, I can understand. It's like, oh, we've done our job. Now let's protect ourselves.
All right. Before I get your prediction, and first off, congratulations to Argentina making it to the championship game. We get France and Morocco tomorrow. But we'll get your prediction on that game and then the championship. We'll just touch on this Rich Eisen thing real quick. And again, need to go watch it. It's in his first hour on Monday. Sadly, he did not make a YouTube clip over it that I have been able to see. But if you just go find his first hour, he's like on the Roku channel now and all that. I listen to it on a podcast form when I'm listening to the full show. But his whole thing was extra time.
Okay.
And I am with him. Extra time makes no sense.
Okay.
Now, I get it way back in the day where he made the joke of they were keeping time by the sun. But now we have all this technology that we can keep track of this stuff. And his issue is kind of like mine, where it's not a set number. Like, okay, you have 5 extra minutes. I'm cool with just letting the clock run. And then, okay, we have 5 extra minutes. But it's kind of 5 extra minutes.
Right.
It's 5 extra minutes unless somebody got injured a little bit, and then we'll add a little bit of time. Or, oh, wait, hold on. You're on the attack. I will let you finish your attack, and then we will be done. And it's just this weird arbitrary thing, which it makes soccer what it is. And this is just a non-soccer fan making fun of it. But his guys that he works with brought up an idea of, all right, let's do it in the NFL. Like Jacksonville is trailing Tennessee 34-31 with 10 seconds to go, and they have the ball. And the referee, the new rule is, well, once the time runs out, we'll let you finish this drive. And then once this drive is over, then the game is over. That's kind of what extra time is right now.
That's actually, number one, that would be an incredibly intriguing idea.
It would be interesting.
Very interesting. And I'm glad that Rich Eisen has brought this up, because he's not the first. I've actually done some digging about this into my own. And the top brass at FIFA, President Gianni Infantino, also looked at this. There was a tournament in the Netherlands. If you speak Dutch, go and watch this tournament on YouTube. They have all the games. It's the Future of Football Cup. And a lot of you teams, your top teams from the Netherlands, Belgium, they had a couple of others, and it was kind of a friendly tournament. But they specifically did it to trial a lot of new rules that they would want to see implemented overall. One of them was about the timing. Instead of your traditional 45 minutes plus whatever to end of the half, the clock was set at 30 minutes.
Okay.
But it was treated just like you would have in basketball, football, whatever. If you have a foul, clock stops. Ball goes out of play, clock stops. The minute the clock hits 0, end of the half. And in one of the games, it was just in that situation. One of the guys running on goal, 5 seconds left, trying to get the shot off. And even the play-by-play guys were joking, oh, he was going for a buzzer beater on that one because the time ran out. And it's just like, oh, that's it, end of the half, and then the end of the game, what have you.
His idea, and again, go watch the whole thing because it's great, but his idea was to have 2 clocks. And one clock counting up for the normal 45 minutes. And then every time that the referee determines, okay, too much time is being taken for an injury or a goal or whatever, or a sub, and we're going to add extra time, he puts up a hand, and then the clock operator hits a button, and the second clock starts counting up.
Oh.
And then at the end of the 45 minutes, wherever that clock is at, that's your extra time. And then that clock starts counting down.
I like that idea.
I loved it.
That's perfect, because you would still keep your fourth official with the keeping time. But instead of saying, oh, maybe 30 seconds for this, a minute for a goal, it's like, oh, ref raises his hand.
The exact time that it's taken out, I think we'll clean that up. And you get that last second push for soccer. I do get it where I've watched these games where I'm like, well, this is obviously their last push.
Yep.
And this will be their last chance, and then the game will be over. And then it kind of gives them that time to try to set something up. So I get it. I'm not saying soccer is broken by any means, but it's just those fun things that we talk about for sure. So who's winning? Who's winning this whole thing?
Honestly, and this is someone who originally had Brazil winning it all. Thank you very much, Croatia.
Yeah, I had Portugal, so
I'm going with arguably the second favorites. Messi, his last tournament, he's been fantastic, especially in the knockout stages. Would it surprise me if Argentina winds up beating Morocco in the final? Not at all. The way that Morocco was done and the jokes about the teams that they beat, but you give me the likes of Messi and his crew against, even though you have strong attacking talent with France, assuming they win, Kylian Mbappe, Olivier Giroud, Antoine Griezmann, they still have their limits and they can be pushed. And I think the Albiceleste are strong enough and stout enough defensively. I think they're in best position to win it all.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. They looked really good. I only got to watch the highlights today. I had a final I had to take, but watch the highlights of it, and they looked like they were in the control for the most part. And it is just that perfect story,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, with Messi to end it. It would be really cool for Morocco to end up in the finals where nobody saw that thing coming. And it is just very interesting, again, as a non-soccer person, that I still remember Argentina lost to Saudi Arabia at the opening of this World Cup, and now here they are.
And the entire Saudi team, every member was given a Rolls-Royce Phantom as an award. And I'm like, man, why couldn't have I have made that team? Just for that. It was just like, yeah, I'm here, you know.
Hey, maybe Argentina was given a little something too. Like, just let us have this cool win, and then you can continue doing what you do. Just finishing up, I have it up on the screen. The Lewis and Bengal girls are going to easily defeat Pendleton as clock just hit 0. Bengals win it 58-23. So congratulations to the girls. Boys will be in action probably in about 20 minutes or so, right as we're ending the show. But another good topic for you to join me on. I'm sure we'll talk about it again next week when Hagen is back, because he's somebody that we both enjoyed watching a lot of. But Mike Leach did pass away today. It was kind of that the suddenness of everything over the weekend, and then the horrible Twitter crap yesterday, which, guys, stop just claiming people are dead on Twitter and then watching it blow up. It's not cool. But he does pass away today. I believe they were saying a heart attack.
Yeah, because I was reading the story initially. When I heard about it, I was like, hey, what happened to Mike Leach? They're not saying. And then they got into the details, heart attack, being treated, lack of oxygen. I'm like, I hope he survives. The pirate has to live on. But
absolutely,
when I heard the news today, in a way it was expected, but it's still punch straight to the gut.
So I got two things. We'll go through a couple of his career. He started off as a offensive line coach for Cal Poly. Ended up coaching overseas. Was his first head coaching job. What was it? Ireland, I think, is what I had read. But he went somewhere to go coach. Came back, was a head coach for Texas Tech, Washington State, and Mississippi State. 158 and 107. Made 17 bowl appearances. Was the coach of the year twice. So he was a very good coach, very eccentric coach, and that is what I come with. But I'm going to hit one touchy subject, maybe a little bit. I'm getting really, really sick and tired. I don't care what your thoughts of the vaccine were or COVID, but I am so tired of every death being vaccine related. What? Just go. He was 61. He had health problems. See him go.
Yeah.
Every death, every sickness, every whatever. Oh, it was probably the jab. Stop it. It's the most disrespectful thing you could ever do. It's like, it's because of this. That killed him. No. He's dead.
The human body is just a wondrous thing. The bones, muscles, how everything goes on. You can't just pinpoint, it was because of this. Just because it's been a talking point in the news the last 3 years? Really? Yeah, do I have my opinions? Yes, but am I going to say, this and that? It's like, no, because A, I don't know, and B, what good does it really serve?
Yeah, and C, it's not the right time.
No, not whatsoever. Let his family mourn. Let everybody else have this period of calm. Everybody grieve. Then if you want to start trouble about it after that, whatever. That's on you.
But what is the right time is to go back and look at some of the great things that Mike Leach has said in press conferences. I think that's what we all remember him for. So I looked up one. It'll probably get us in trouble with YouTube. But that is totally fine because I'm just used to it now with YouTube. And anybody that wants to take our revenue, we don't have any. So it's fine with me. But I wanted to bring up my favorite. And this is Mike Leach back in 2019 getting asked a question about who would win in the Pac-12 if it came down to their mascots. So here you go.
Well, first of all, what kind of mythical powers does a Sun Devil have? We've got to consider that. I'm going to say the Wildcat's out. The Trojan, does he have a horse or is he on foot? Does he have a bow and arrow or just his sword? The Bruin, definitely formidable. Another bear up there at Cal. The tree, I imagine that tree's going to get chopped down. Unless we're going to go with a bird and somebody might get pecked or something. I don't know. And then the duck might lose interest and just fly away and get out of there, which may be good advice under the circumstances. The husky, no chance. The beaver, well, we'll see how long that beaver can hold his breath. The ute, again, we're back to, is he on horseback? Does he have a bow and arrow? Did he trade for a rifle? I mean, because if that ute's got a rifle, there's some definite problems. And then, you'd have to get one of those Harry Potter activists to read up on how you kill a Sun Devil, because there's a lot of outside stuff there. Just as far as a beast alone, a buffalo's going to be pretty hard to tangle with. I mean, a buffalo's utterly outstanding. Well, but Butch is going to have to be clear-minded and crafty. I mean, Butch will find a way. There's no question. The Cougar will find a way. Clear-minded and crafty, a combination of stay out of harm's way and attack when you get your chances or your openings.
He's just great. Absolutely just fantastic.
And I'm sitting there, it's like when he's pointing it out, it's like, okay, this is weird, but he's making a lot of valid points. It's like, do we have mythical gods on the Sun Devil side or what? And he was going with the Trojan. It's like,
he just had one of those brains that just could really, he's very smart, very articulate, but very strange. And just was absolutely fantastic. So Mike Leach will definitely be missed. We might be talking about him again next week because Robert Hagan will want to put in his two cents. Navy, after their loss to Army, firing their coach was a bit surprising as well.
Yes and no, because again, reading about this, when you have like your typical, especially a Power 5 school, you want to get to your big bowl games, win your conference, get to the playoff, win a national championship. Great. Mm-hmm. But with the service academies in general, it's like, we want to go to bowl games, we want to be respectable, and we want to win the Commander-in-Chief trophy.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Early on in Neo Matalolo's career, Navy dominated in those aspects. And even when they had moved to the American, they were in contention for major bowl games and even the American Conference title. The last 7 games, though, against Army, after a long, venerated streak, now Army's singing second a little too often. You've got Air Force, who just won the Commander-in-Chief trophy this year. So you can get it from the Naval Academy's perspective. It's like, yeah, this is great, but you're kind of dropping off a little bit and need to make a change. It's cruel, and he brought up some good points about what Navy does in their schedule versus even the other service academies. And honestly, I hope he lands his feet somewhere else. That would be great to see, especially with that option and being competitive in a game with a quarterback who's small enough to play sprint football. I mean, the guy was like our line. Mm-hmm. Think me minus 10 pounds, and that's your starting quarterback. Yeah, he's a lot more athletic than I am, but you still have some limitations. So kudos to him and his career. And again, it's a bit rough, but definitely want to see him get another coaching job. I think he deserves another chance somewhere else.
Quick award updates. Caleb Williams wins the Heisman out of USC. Had a fantastic year. Got that pick right. Robert had went Stenson Bennett. Sorry, buddy, you get it wrong. And congrats to Idaho Vandal quarterback Giovanni McCoy, who was named the winner of the Jerry Rice Award for Best Freshman in the FCS. He had
Nice.
31 first place votes, was 203 of 297 for 2,735 yards, had 27 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. So had a very, very good year. It was a question of who was going to start for Idaho, and McCoy did a good job getting the Vandals back to the playoffs for the first time in many, many years. They lost that first round game, but at least they were there. Get your quick predictions here, sir. Semifinals are in the FCS. Incarnate Word at North Dakota State. North Dakota State is a 9-point favorite. That's Friday at 4 p.m. Who you got?
I'm sticking with North Dakota State. Big credit to Incarnate Word. They're upsetting the shootout 66-63 over Sacramento State, but you look at what North Dakota State's done. They're remaining a powerhouse, and a lot of talks about them making the move to the FBS. You go with the favorites for a reason. This is one of those times.
And I will also go North Dakota State. Robert does as well. And then the other one, Montana State, 12-1. At South Dakota State, also, or they went 11-1. The San Diego State, a 6-point favorite. This one on Saturday. Who you got?
This one, I'm going to pick a mild upset, especially looking at the conference balance. I'm going with Montana State on this one. This is the one that it would be a lot sneakier.
Yeah, we are both also going for Montana State. Obviously, we watch them a bit more up in our area in the Big Sky and everything. So see what they are able to do. Bowl games start on Friday. Anybody that's watched the show the last couple of weeks know that I do not care anymore because college football does not care anymore. Not because of the playoffs, not because they're going to expand the playoffs, but because there's 700 bowl games and they let players opt out, or players and coaches opt out before the bowl games, which shows that college football season's over. And now that you can move on and get ready for next year.
Now, to be fair, ESPN did do the smart thing and cancel the glorious game that was the Frisco Football Classic, in large part because there weren't enough eligible teams, but that's entirely beside the point.
We needed more canceled, but we will have our bowl game predictions on the Facebook page on Friday because Hagen's going to make me pick games, but I'll guarantee you I'll spend 5 seconds just putting X's on names because I just don't care. Real quick, go through some LCSE news because this is a Warrior show, even though we're not in studio today. In the basketball side of things, the men basically had the week off. They played an exhibition game against Northwest Indian College. They roll in that one 113-40. Not much of a game. John Lustig, the freshman, who out of Colfax, who I mentioned earlier, had 25 points and 11 rebounds. And the son of John Stockton, Sam Stockton, had 11 points, 11 rebounds, and 7 assists in that game. A couple good ones for the Warriors. They take on Corbin on Friday and Bushnell on Saturday. That's both men and women, so I won't touch that here in a second. But the women had a much tougher task this week as they are ranked 13th, I want to say, right now is LC, and they defeated the number 9 ranked Carroll College, the old rivalry back when the Warriors were part of the Frontier League. And LC wins that one 62-50. Ellie Sander had 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 steals in that game. And LC used a 16-7 run in the third quarter to pull away and put up the minor upset victory there. And then they took care of George Fox 70-41. Ellie Sander added 11 points and 7 rebounds and was named the Cascade Conference Women's Basketball Player of the Week for those 2 performances. So congratulations to her. Again, Corbin Friday, Bushnell on Saturday. Brad Danner will have those calls on 9:50 a.m. KOZE if you want to check those out. Just heard I get a couple LC basketball games come the end of January, so I got to get myself ready for those. Track and field has started their season. I don't know why they want to run in this crap. I don't know if this Spokane Invitational was indoors or not. I didn't read too much into it, but it was kind of a little preseason get-together, and LC already shattering records as Madigan Kelly set a school record in her first run in the 60 meters with a 7.96. So she's locked in the nationals already here on the first meet. Yes, sir.
You said that was the 60 meters.
Yep.
That is indoors.
Okay, there you go. So all indoor stuff. It's too cold out there, so I got my Annika Grogan, who all we talked about last year was her breaking records, improved on her own record in the 200 meters with a 25.46 time.
Wow.
Freshman and Lewis native Emily Collins, who I called for a couple years on the basketball side, came in first run ever and is already in the top 4 all time in the 400 meters for Lewison with a 59.4. Freshman Trenton Johnson set a school record in the triple jump with a 13.09 meter attempt, and then outdid it in the same competition with a 13.54 meter attempt. So
What is in
congratulations to
the
him.
water up
This-
there?
This track
I'm
This
telling
track
you.
team, man, they have been bringing in some ridiculous talent. Most of these people I've talked about are freshmen and sophomores. It's insane. Where am I at here? London Kirk had the record for LC with the 200 meters, now owns the record for the 400 meter. He also became the first warrior to run a sub 50-second time in the event, had a 49.24. So congratulations to him. And in signing news, Piper Parcells, German runner whose sister runs for LC, is going to join the team next year. She does both cross country and track and field, but the coach has said that they're going to focus on track and field at first. She specializes in the 400 meter, 800 meter, the mile, and relays. So
so
lot of news.
A lot of some of your sprints and your middle distances. That'll be handy.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I get into the high school stuff, I want to get your touch on it. I was going to skip over it with it just being me because there's not much of a debate or conversation in it. But your thoughts, sir, on the Brittany Griner situation and getting freed from Russia?
Honestly, in a way, I figured that it was inevitable simply because for everything going on behind it and the circumstances, there were some suspicions. I've talked about that a few times on my show.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about, playing in certain countries. It's not desirable. You really have to be careful. I'm very glad that it's happened. And I'm even more glad that it's brought attention, like I have been screaming about this whole time. Why is it that WNBA players have to go overseas to some of these countries in the first place to go ahead? If it's just for playing, fine, but playing, supplementing your income. Now, the WNBA has stepped up as far as minimum salary. Kelsey Plum, I read her thoughts about revenue distribution. It's sad how it had to happen, but I'm glad she's at home with her family, and I'm glad that because of this, a lot of big strides can come to the WNBA as a whole. So
Yeah.
a lot of good from this.
As you said, wild situation, and yes, everyone's going to read in who she got traded for, and I've seen all the jokes, and some of them are very funny about setting USA and Russia as the Seattle Seahawks and the Denver Broncos. I think that's my favorite one. I think that's my favorite joke on a serious situation. But I am also with you. I'm glad that she's home. It was a silly situation that I do believe Russia kind of used their advantage. It was like, oh, a celebrity did something stupid. Oh, we can use this in our favor, and it worked out well for them. But I'm with you. I do believe. Do I think that they should be paid like NBA? No, because obviously they don't make as much as far as what the contracts bring in. But we need to get closer with it. I do think the WNBA has their product has been improving over the years. I'm just not a basketball fan on the professional level either way, but maybe I like the WNBA more because they might even play defense on their side, and that's not what happens in the NBA.
But believe it or not, I watched the WNBA in its early days in the 90s. I still watch if there's nothing else on. I watch from time to time now. You will be glad to know there is defense. It is legitimate. So
all I ask for. Run through some more high school stuff real quick, and then we'll get into some baseball to finish off this show. Again, Eric, thank you so much for saving me this last hour. I've had a lot of fun catching back up. But wrestling results real quick. First for Clarkston, they lost their duel to Moscow 48-30. Dawson Bailey beat Sam Young in the 132-pound mark. Big tournament on Othello. Congratulations to Dawson Bailey again, and also Bodie Thieveridge. We have his dad on the show before. He is the coach for Clarkston. He won in the 145-pound weight class, as they will be in action against Pullman tomorrow, as well as the Best of the West tournament this weekend. Lewiston girls wrestled in the George Wild tournament at Kellogg. Jolie Slater won in the 100 to 107 pound weight class, and Cassidy Ryder won in the 185 pound weight class. Congratulations to them. And the boys went 1-2 in the 8-team West or Wild West Showdown Duels tournament in Topanish over the weekend, and they are facing Lake City tonight. So lots going on. All right, I teased this to you, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the smaller schools this weekend, boys basketball Friday night, Lapway, who is on like a 37 game winning streak. I don't remember the full number. Defeated Genesee 105 to 32. Lapway had 100 points at the end of the third quarter. Obviously, pulled off the Dogs, only scored 5 in the fourth. They're very nice. Case Wynot is the man I was telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
The young man had his first triple-double of his career, 36 points, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists. He is averaging over 35 points a game early on in this year. It's absolutely phenomenal. You will be seeing him somewhere in an NCAA school next season for sure. This Lapway team, legit. Orfino defeated Timberline 46-44. Loudon Cochran had 13 points in that game. Pomeroy needed 2 free throws from Trace Roberts inside 5 seconds left to defeat St. John Endicott Lacrosse 55-54. So congratulations on that one. Saturday, Potlatch took care of Clearwater Valley 64-19. They were up 23-0 at the end of the first quarter. That's a theme for some of these games, just to say. Orfino beat Deary 45-38. Maniacs outscored Deary 32-19 in the second half for that one. Troy remained undefeated, defeating Prairie 36-20. So they're now 4-0. On the girls' side, Lapway girls almost as good as the boys. They defeat Council 72-47. Jalen McCormick Marks had 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 steals. Then the next night, they took out Kendrick 63-43, and Lauren Gold had 19 points. Kendrick, before that, there's like a little tournament that these 4 teams were playing. One team backed out. Orfino took their spot. So Kendrick defeated Orfino on Friday, 49-36. It was the third time those 2 schools have met already this year in about a month, just because of the way things worked out. Again, Kendrick had a 17-0 lead after the first quarter. These first quarters are just silly.
What is it? It's like, okay, we're 8 minutes. We'll just wrap everything up there and let everybody else just go on about their way.
Speaking of, looking over here, the boys have started for Lewiston, and Pendleton just scored their first point. They're now 9-1, 2 minutes into that game. I'll keep an eye on that the rest of the night. Potlatch defeated Clearwater Valley on the girls' side, 54-25. Jordan Reynolds herself had 30 points in that game. So congratulations to her. Cami defeated Logos 62-15. They were up 21-0 after the first quarter. Again, I said it was a trend. Laney Landmark had 16 points for Cami and Grace Ann Vanderplug. Give her credit. She had 12 of the 15 points for Logos. She did everything she could offensively. Logos is it's a smaller school in a small town. So they don't have a ton of talent to work with, but they did really good at football this year. I will give them that. And I think that will just about wrap it up. Again, there's like 20 games going on right now between girls and boys basketball, a couple wrestling meets. So I'm going to be busy when I get down to the Tribune when the show's done.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it's time for baseball. And we won't take too much time on it because it happened on Wednesday. It's almost a whole week ago. But of course, it's always how these things work. The big news happens the day after our weekly show. But Aaron Judge made me a happy boy. And he re-signed with the New York Yankees, 9 years, $360 million. And I don't care if he's overpaid or the numbers just sound silly to people. He's making $700,000 a week, and he's well worth it.
I mean, and I said this before, when you are breaking records from the likes of Roger Maris, and it was a record held for the longest time by the Babe, you're paying a premium if you go ahead and you re-sign the next season. While I'm mad that we let Kevin Kiermaier go, he's up in Toronto and whatever their ballpark's going to be like with their renovations.
Mm-hmm.
You did the right thing.
It was the necessary thing.
It was a necessary thing, and I'm just thinking, if only my Rays had that kind of money, because he would be looking sweet in our colors, hitting 75 home runs a year at the Trop for a decade or wherever we
Right.
go off to. But again, great guy, great player, well earned, and we get to strike him out a few more times over the next 9 years. So I'm not mad entirely.
Now they got to get some pieces around him. I know.
But do you really?
Yeah, we do. Though the rumors of the Yankees trying to trade for Fernando Tatis Jr. just seem unreal to me.
What? No.
That is the rumor that was all over Twitter yesterday, that the Yankees are inquiring about Tatis, and I'm like, I don't know about that one.
I
don't
mean-
believe it. All right, but real quick, because we got 4 minutes left to try to run through this. I'm just going to run through some of the other free agent signings that happened. Just give me the one that really stood out to you. Tyone went to the Cubs for 4 years, $68 million. Kenley, excuse me. Kenley Jensen went to the Boston Red Sox for 2 years, 32. Red Sox also got Masataka Yoshida from Japan for 5 years, $90 million. Wilson Contreras ends up with the Cardinals for 5 years, $87 million. The wild one to me, Xander Bogaerts, 11 years, $280 million to the Padres, who apparently won that lottery that was worth almost $2 billion, because now they have all this money to spend. Out of those, which one really stood out to you?
Really? Bogarts. Now, I saw Yoshida, and I saw the footage of him just like completely raking. And hey, good team in NPB. That posting fee's just fine. But with how close the Padres were, but then how far apart they were from the Dodgers last season, given how the NL West shook out, it's like, in some ways I get it, but in the long term, is this really going to give you the boost that you need? Because the Dodgers mainly stayed intact. I mean, yeah, you had Bellinger go to the Cubs, and you have new faces in the National League like Verlander going to the Mets. See how that works. That's like, I see what the Padres are doing. I don't necessarily know if it's going to work. Time will tell.
Right. I mean, they're throwing money out, that's for sure. And then one last thing in baseball, Sean Murphy gets traded to Atlanta yesterday. Murphy in a three-way trade. So William Contreras from Atlanta ends up going to Milwaukee, who got part of it. Obviously, the Oakland A's catcher Murphy goes to Atlanta, and 5 different players goes to Oakland, and we will see in about 5 years if any of them turn out to be anything. Probably not, because they got stuck in the athletics organization. So that poor team.
Look, the soon-to-be Las Vegas A's are, they're a little bit of a quagmire right now, but once they make the move, Beanball is gonna light it up in Vegas.
I'm
Trust me on that one.
just waiting for Seth Brown, the old Warrior, to go to a better team. He is being lost there. And then, of course, can't end the show without also talking about Mills Lane, who passed away at the age of 85. Fantastic ref. I know he had like a judge show because he was married to Judge Judy.
Judge Mills Lane. I never really watched that show. I know him best from The Bite with Tyson and Holyfield, and also, of course, MTV's Celebrity Deathmatch. Good fight, good night.
Absolutely. So, let's get it on was a fantastic catchphrase for him. So obviously he is definitely missed too. So a couple of losses in the sports world there. And then, of course, because we have to talk about golf, we don't have time to hit the old button. But they had their match again. It's not as fun when it's 4 golfers.
I mean, with the bigger spectacle of it was kind of lost on me. The timing was weird. Again, with the different golfers, okay, but it's just like, now that I got this and this thing with Tiger Woods going on, and I got Liv and all of that drama, it's like, this is just something else that I can ignore now. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, no, just give me a pro golfer and a different athlete or celebrity and
Mm-hmm.
be a lot of trash talk. Like, I don't need to see golf under the lights. It doesn't change golf for me. It was weird. But real quick,
It's been done.
we've hit the time, end of the show. Again, thank you so much for saving this last hour with me and having some fun conversations. But, sir, plug away.
So, at Squid Sportshead on Twitter, if you want to follow me and all of my insane live tweeting, especially when I'm watching late night cricket, the Not a Network Podcast Network. If there's a bunch of shows on it, Point of Viewer, definitely not safe for work, but an enjoyable Sunday night. The Broadhurst Watkins Sports Report, myself and Harry Broadhurst. We have our thing going on. Parallel Convergence for those of you interested in professional League of Legends. We're bringing back Life is Like a Game show. Maybe convincing somewhat of a certain bracket show that's been discussed, throwing a Hail Mary pass at the very end.
Right. Well, I'm hoping, Harry and I were talking about it today because, again, I was just going down my list of people to see who can hop on. I was trying to do local people at first, and I said at the beginning of the show, Robert Hagen got sick when everyone around this valley were having Christmas parties, apparently, or that was everyone's excuse not to hang out with me. But we were talking and possibly having me on on your guys' show for the Jets Jaguars game. I told him all comes down to my schedule. I'm working 6 nights this week, so we'll see what next week looks like. If they are nicer to me next week, I will definitely consider it. But it all goes down to that. But again, Eric, thanks so much. It's been a very long time since we've been able to have one of these conversations. And of course, I bring you on after we talk about all the NFL and have you sit through some high school stuff. But you're a good sport.
Hey, you give a shout out to the local folks. That's what you do with, like you say all the time, support local sports.
Absolutely.
They're the backbone. You can go to games.
So many games going on this week before the Christmas break. Go out to the Avista tournament. We'll have more on that next week. And then again, the week after might be a pre-taped show because we will both be at that Avista tournament. But for Eric Watkins, my name is Randy Isbell. Once again, happy birthday to Haley. And get better, Robert Hagen. We'll be back next week for another episode of the R&R Sports Report. But for now, we are